biggest issue, and I call it second verse itis. The song goes off the rails in the second verse. Hey, everybody, I'm with Clay Mills in the SongTown virtual studio. Welcome, Clay.
Yeah, man.
There you go. Good to see you. All right, as our usual program, I have a topic today that Clay has never heard. And,
Woo.
one of the things when I'm mentoring people, that the biggest issue, and I call it second verse itis, like they either don't know what to do in the second verse, or they repeat the first verse essentially with different words. Yeah, or just the song goes off the rails in the second verse. And then I often have people that tell me, like, man, I just keep getting stuck in second verses. So I want to address those problems today, Clay, and get your thoughts on, what do you do if you keep getting stuck on second verses? What do you do if your second verses are just kind of repeats of your first verse? Or what if you tend to chase rabbits in your first verse, or just can't think of what you want to say, all that kind of stuff. So what are your initial thoughts on that?
A lot of times the biggest reason I see that people get stuck in the second verse is they don't leave themselves anywhere to go. Meaning by the time they write the first verse and then they write the chorus, they've literally said everything they need to say for that entire song. So then they've got nowhere to go that's interesting in the second verse. So either they go completely in a direction that's off topic, somewhere they don't need to go, or they're just repeating what they've already said before, repeating the same ideas.
Right.
And, I heard somebody go, well, your second verse is you should just say what you say in the first verse, but in a different way. And that's not what a second verse is for. But
No.
I mean, when I was learning songwriting, someone taught me that. And so I think it's easy for people to get off track. There's so much information out there. But I would just say if you don't have anywhere to go in that second verse, make sure your first verse, you haven't said too much. You always talk about first verse should just be characters, context, and setting. So you're just setting the stage for that chorus and that big idea. If in that first verse you tell everybody, I was in love with you, you left, I'm crushed, but now I'm better. Okay, well, where have you got left to go? You've told me the entire song in the first verse, So I would just say back up and check out your first verse and see if you can't pull some information out. I was critiquing a song the other day, and there was enough information in that first verse to write 4 songs. And
wow.
It was amazing. I was like, I couldn't believe how much information was in the first verse of this song, and the writer was very proud of it. But I think, we have to try. It's hard when you first start writing, you want to impress people. And I think the hardest part to learning to be a great writer is stop trying to impress people, stop trying to show how good a writer you are, and get to the point and say what you need to say, and say it in a way that cuts to the heart, and communicate yourself well. And I think the rest will take care of itself. As you do that, if you start from that place, then you can work on making it more interesting. But if your goal is to just write this incredibly interesting verse, then nobody's going to care. It's not going to matter how interesting it is.
Yeah, I was mentoring somebody recently, and I wound up just asking them straight out, did you write this to try to impress me with all the clever lines that you could come up with, or did you write this to tell a story in a heartfelt way?
Yeah.
And they said, probably to impress you. And I said, that's not what the listening audience is wanting out there. They're not going to go, that song's got such a clever rhyme or a clever line that I'm going to go listen to that song on repeat, or I'm going to go buy that album on vinyl, or whatever it might be. They're going to listen to your song and go, what did I feel? Did I feel something that I want to feel again? If I do, then I'm going to keep playing that song. So yeah, I think all that stuff's super important, and if you find yourself in that trap of repeating the first verse, usually the reason is we come up with one good way to set up our title and our chorus, and then we can't think of another way. So we
Right.
kind of have to use the same device to get back to that chorus the second time. And that's why in this song building book that I wrote with Bill O'Hanlon, and that we teach in SongTown, I talk about mapping out your song or doing a blueprint of your song so that you know what you're going to say in every section. If you do that kind of technique, you're not ever going to get to the second verse and not know what to say, because you decided in the very beginning what you're going to say, and you also decided to say something that was unique and different than what you said in the first verse, and that takes the song idea farther. So that blueprinting idea can be really valuable if you get to second verses and go, wow, what do I say that's different? To think about that ahead of time. And there's song titles that um, I throw out, or a co-writer will throw out, and we'll talk about it and try to do a blueprint, and we just decide there's not enough there to write a song about. That
Right.
we can't think of another second verse a second verse that would take the big idea farther. So we just don't write that
Mm-hmm.
idea until we come up with something that will do that. Today I was writing with a hit writer, and we were kind of wrestling with a title, and we decided before we wrote it that we just didn't think we could pull it off. We just didn't think there was enough there, and that we had enough clarity on what we were trying to say and all that kind of stuff. So that could be a technique. I tell people that the blueprint idea is a guaranteed fix for second verse itis, because you'll never get to the second verse and not know what to say. And I think
Right.
another thing I see a lot, I saw this week, is someone, they were telling this love story, and by the second verse, they were asking the person to marry them. And so the first verse they met, and by the second verse they're asking the person to marry them, and then the third verse they're talking about spending forever with the person. And I'm like, you're telling a lifetime of story in 3 minutes here.
Right.
Why don't you write a song about the day we met, and then write a song about, I'm at this point where I'm going to ask you to spend forever with me, and then write a song about what it would be like being together forever and growing old together. There's so much in there, and they're
So,
trying to
but
get.
you're not saying that you shouldn't write a story song that talks about a person's entire life or entire I loved you since 18, and then they're on the deathbed, he's holding her hand as she's passing. Like, we know those songs have existed and been some great songs in history.
Yeah, I left out an important detail. So the chorus of this song was about that night we met
Right.
and how I felt. So it's like it was just moving too fast.
Yeah.
It was glossing over everything, because they were trying to get so many things in there and so many movements of time and all that. So yeah, there's some great songs that are, talk about a lifetime of something, but this particular song really needed to stay in that moment, because the writer was having trouble getting back to that chorus every time, because he was jumping past it.
Yeah.
So he was getting way ahead of himself, and then he was having to back up to get back to that chorus, and then he'd get way ahead of himself and have to back up. So I think that the movement of time is a really important issue in the second verse, to think about.
Yeah.
How am I? Is this a song where I need to stay in a moment, or is this a song where I need to move through different sections of life and how it applies? There's an old song called "Where Have You Been?" That's a great example of how they do tell a lifetime of story, but it
Hmm.
gets back to that chorus in a really natural way, and the chorus is not set in one particular time that can't change. The chorus is able to move with the story, that kind of thing.
Right. So every time you get to the chorus after a verse, the words for the third chorus mean something different, even though they're the same words as they meant in the first. So that chorus is able to move through time, and you're not just jumping back and forth with the whole thing.
Right.
And yeah, that's as bad as jumping pronouns around, is that jumping through time where you're going back and forth and where am I now? It's like, it's okay to do that in movies, and TV shows now, they're jumping around everywhere, but you've got a whole, TV series to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
In a song, you've got 3 minutes or less typically to tell this story, and jumping around in time is not going to be your best friend.
No, it's not at all. And this particular song started off in present tense, then the chorus was past tense. The second verse was future tense, back to the chorus in past tense, back to future tense in the bridge. That kind of thing is really confusing for a listener. And you mentioned earlier the character's context and setting. If you think about a song structure this way, so the first verse introduces character's context and setting, the chorus introduces a big idea or big emotion, and the second verse, the job of the second verse is to take that big emotion farther. So if you think of it like, okay, I can't introduce this big idea and then just drop it. I've got to introduce this big idea and then go into like, why does this matter so much? So that when I get back around to it, it means even more. So just that process of the way you think about songs, I think can be helpful, because I've heard people relay to me, well, like I was taught just, you got to use the first verse to get to the chorus and the second verse has to get to the chorus. That kind of leaves you in that conundrum where you're probably going to have very similar verses and it's not going to move the story forward. But if you understand that you have to progress the story with that second verse, then that can fix a lot of second verse problems too.
Yeah. All right, Marty, we have Sweetwater, our sponsor, to thank for today. We love those guys. Thank you very much. Down below, we have show notes. We have books that you can check out. Check out SongTown. We have a community, thousands of people worldwide that collaborate together. We help you level up your skills, help you write better. And when your songs are ready, we can help you connect to the industry. So check it out.
Absolutely.
Take care.
See you next time.